On the morning of June 14, 1935, 2,000 unemployed men clambered down from a freight train here in Regina. It was the depths of the Depression, and the men were on their way to Ottawa to demand real work for real wages. But they would get no further. The dirty 30s brought drought, unemployment, and economic collapse to Western Canada. Many men rode the rails in search of work. Harry Lindsley was one of them, until he ended up in a government work camp in British Columbia.
Well, if you like living on hard-boiled eggs and pancakes, it's all right, you know. It was rough. There was the shelter was a little lacking. There was a little heat, but not enough. While the work wasn't hard for the average able-bodied man, it was miserable. Going into the brush and digging out culverts and chopping down overhanging trees.
The government's make-work projects paid only $5 a month. The men grew increasingly restless. In Vancouver, they began to organize, and someone came up with the idea of a trek to Ottawa to demand that Prime Minister R.B. Bennett do something. Lindsley joined up.
We wanted to ask him to see if he couldn't rectify the situation with regard to work and wages. That's all we were asking for.
1,000 men climbed on top of freight trains and headed east. Riding the rails was a new experience for many of them.
For me, it was easy, but for a lot of the fellows, they were scared out of their wits, really, a lot of them. And some of them just dropped out from time to time. But as fast as they dropped out, the next station we come to, somebody else come on.
The trek gathered steam as it rolled through Alberta. The federal government, worried it would get out of control, made plans to bring it to an end. When 2,000 men reached Regina, the government declared the trek unlawful, and the men camped out at the exhibition grounds while the stalemate played itself out.
The ordinary population treated us good. When and where they could, they fed us. On the whole, they were behind us, and they were sympathetic to our cause.
The Prime Minister agreed to meet with the delegation. 8 men left Regina for Ottawa, this time riding inside a railroad car. But the meeting degenerated into a shouting match.
When Bennett came out with the declaration that we were nothing but a bunch of communist agitators, this guy just got up at the time and he said, "You goddamn liar."
The RCMP and Regina City Police were ordered to start arresting the trek leaders. On July 1st, they descended on the men during a peaceful rally. Harry Lindsley was at the back of the crowd.
Well, to tell you the truth, I was afraid. And there was a lot more of them afraid, too. Not only me. We stayed back there, and there was a lot of the fellas who were determined to cause a commotion to justify their demands that did go for it after it got started. I just seen a lot of bodies flying around and fighting, if you can call it fighting, throwing stones, throwing rocks, and yelling and screaming, and I got the hell out of there.
Then gunshots rang.
I just figured it was gunshots in the air to scare the fellas. I didn't believe at the time that those policemen would fire into a crowd. If they did, well, who knows whether they did it on purpose or it was just accidentally.
The toll from the Regina riot was 1 dead, dozens injured, more than 100 arrested.
It seemed to me that nothing was going to be happening unless we really showed that we were madder than hell about the whole thing. And when a group of men get madder than hell about something they don't like and something that is unjust and unjustified, it appears to me that they're going to fight.
The trek was disbanded. The men simply drifted away. Harry Lindsley ended up in Moose Jaw, where he finally got the job he'd been fighting for. But he doesn't see the trek as a failure.
We think that was the part of the turning point for the working class people, to show the general public that we're willing to fight for a decent living, a decent job, and as again I say, work and wages.
Although the men may have made their point with the On to Ottawa trek, so did the federal government. Ottawa made it clear from that point on it was prepared to use the mounted police to crush peaceful protest. I'm Bill Waiser.